This is a brass check recording, and I'm reading from a book with the improbable title, Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. Natural relief from heartburn, indigestion, reflux, and GERD. And I'm just going to read a section from this book. I recommend it for anybody interested in health, because you'll see why. But he makes a lot of comments. It's written by a doctor with the help of a PhD. And here's what he has to say. Because he recommends, even though he's an MD, he recommends simple, inexpensive, natural, effective treatments for the medical conditions that he evaluates. So here's what he says in his book. Because there are no profits to be made from selling these natural treatments, the pharmaceutical industry, which controls the vast majority of medical research in the United States, will never investigate them or manufacture them. In fact, they will do everything possible to disparage them because, should the word get out that they exist, natural treatments could threaten their stranglehold on the practice of medicine. And this book came out in 2001. That's almost 20 years ago. I just want to read it one more time. Because there are no profits to be made from selling natural treatments, the pharmaceutical industry, which controls the vast majority of medical research in the United States, will never investigate them or manufacture them. In fact, they will do everything possible to disparage them. Because, should the word get out that they exist, natural treatments could threaten their stranglehold on the practice of medicine. So, just to rewind that, the pharmaceutical industry controls the vast majority of medical research in the United States. So your tax dollars, instead of going to research to help you, goes to support the business of big pharma. That's number one. And all those scientists and laboratories and lab coats and millions and billions of dollars and people scurrying around and writing papers and all the stuff they're doing it for big pharma. They're not doing it to find things that work. So they're not going to investigate, obviously, and they're not going to manufacture them. And here's the key. They're going to do everything possible, and that means a lot of dirty stuff, to disparage them. That means the natural, cheap, and effective cures. Because, should the word get out that these cures exist, natural treatments could threaten hold their stranglehold. Stranglehold. They don't influence medicine. They have the practice of medicine in a stranglehold. So that's the nature of our society. One of the most important functions in a society is the treatment of the sick. And the treatment of the sick is controlled by a group of people who don't care whether you get well or not. In fact, they prefer that you don't. They prefer that you have a long chronic disease that they can sell you a lifetime of ineffective medicines for. Even better, they'd like you to get sicker so that instead of taking one medicine, you take 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20. That's what we've handed our medical services over to. That's the real problem with healthcare in the United States. Cost is a big problem. Insurance is a big problem. But the fundamental problem is it's corrupt to the core. Let's go on. One might ask, if the possibilities of these natural treatments are so good, why isn't the FDA, the Federal Food Drug Administration, sponsoring or promoting research? Again, the answer is simple. The FDA and the patent medicine industry are two sides of the same coin. One coin, two sides, FDA and the so-called medical industry, two sides of it. The FDA's role has never been to advance the science of medicine. Never. I'm not sure how old the FDA is. It might be coming up on 100 years. Maybe it's a little older, but it's not infinitely old. But never in its history has it been interested in advancing the science of medicine. It has no interest underlined, no interest in finding a cure for any disease. Instead, its role, assigned by Congress, is to make sure the drugs and foods that get marketed in the United States are safe and effective, whatever that means. We know many of them are not safe. We know many of them are not effective, so they're clearly not doing their job. And it's interesting, Congress controls the FDA. Supposedly, we vote for Congress. So how did it end up that the Food and Drug Administration doesn't care about cures and is essentially a partner to Big Pharma and the medical services industry, which we've already established, has no interest in cures, has no interest in effective, inexpensive, safe medicines, not interested at all. They're interested in their profits. There's something wrong here, something profoundly, epically wrong. Okay. So to this end, the FDA has set up a drug approval process that is so expensive and so onerous that it virtually guarantees that only the patent medicine companies can afford to develop new treatments and get them, quote, approved. Thanks to this system, natural treatments, no matter how effective or how safe they are forever destined to carry the label unproven as far as the FDA and the medical establishment are concerned. So for something to be proven and endorsed, it's got to go through an incredibly expensive, elaborate procedure. The only things that can go through expensive, elaborate procedures are things that are going to have huge markups and not be effective. So in other words, if there's a one-pill cure and it can be made for $1, no company can afford to go through the FDA, quote, approval process. If it's toxic and it's not really very effective and the people that take it have to take it for the rest of their lives, and if it sets them up for further illnesses that require more drugs, but the money's right, they can pay for an approval. That's the system we've got. Is it any wonder that we are the sickest developed nation? We're off the charts of the developed nations. We're now slipping into the second-tier nations. I think last time I looked, we're number 42 in terms of health care. Number 42. We're the number one spenders on health care. Health care is bankrupting our nation. Health care is adding exponentially to the price of everything that you want to buy. It's bankrupting you, either slowly or quickly, but inevitably. And yet the care that we get is currently ranked 42. There's not a developed nation on the planet that does worse than us. We are the worst of the developed nations, and we're now sinking down into the second-tier nations. And we pay more than anybody else. The next closest competitor pays half as much as we do. I mean, we can thank the FDA for that, and we can thank the Congress for that, and we can thank Big Pharma for that, and we can thank Wall Street for that. At best, an unproven treatment may be viewed as harmless and a waste of money. At worst, it may be deemed dangerous and the stuff of quacks. The fact is, without sufficient research, they'll never know what it is really, and that seems to be fine with them. To those of us who use these treatments every day and who know how safe and effective they can be, and now he's talking about inexpensive, safe, effective, natural treatments, using them is, as they say, a no-brainer. Every day, our patients with incurable, in quotes, chronic diseases achieve remarkable relief and often cures using nothing more than a carefully selected and carefully applied arsenal of natural remedies and therapies. So the book, again, is Why Stomach Acid is Good for You, Natural Relief for Heartburn, Indigestion, Reflux, and GERD. And the author is Jonathan Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, and Lane Leonard, and Wright's an MD, brave MD, and Leonard's a PhD. I'm not saying that everything that has the natural label is good, safe, or effective. Right? There's plenty of charlatans out there, as there are in all fields. But here's a book, if you've got the problems that the book addresses, it's worth getting. What does it cost? I don't know, $15. And you might learn a lot. And it turns out that a lot of diseases, including asthma, including a whole bunch of other illnesses, let me see if I can find the list, acne, Addison's disease, allergic reactions, celiac disease, childhood asthma, chronic autoimmune hepatitis, diabetes type 1, eczema severe, gallbladder disease, Graves' disease, lupus, macular degeneration, which is an eye problem, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pernicious anemia, polymyalgia rheumatica, don't know what that is, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, ulcerative colitis, and a whole bunch of others may have their roots actually in problems related to the stomach and stomach acid regulation. The thesis of this book, by the way, is that most people's problem is not excess acid, it's insufficient acid. And the reflux that people get and the indigestion, the heartburn, is caused by malfunctioning stomach, not by a stomach that has an excess of acid. It's malfunctioning because it doesn't have enough. So you can read and get their argument in the book. It's very well written, very straightforward, very clear. But I just wanted to read that section to you. This is a doctor speaking, and this is 20 years ago. How much worse do you think it is today? Guaranteed it's a lot worse. So if you got a health problem, you've got to be your own researcher. And don't let them say, you know, he who has himself as a patient has a fool for a, who uses his own doctor has a fool for a patient. Well, there are plenty of fool doctors and worse out there. And if you got something serious, you better crack a few books. This is a good one. This is a good place to start.